On January 26, 2003, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defeated the Oakland Raiders for their first Super Bowl in franchise history. The Bucs defense picked off Rich Gannon 5 times, including one by Super Bowl MVP Dexter Jackson to help grab an early lead, and one by Dwight Smith among the final ticks of the clock in the fourth quarter, with players already celebrating on the sideline. But the path to the Super Bowl started well before the players took the field that season. GM Rich McKay spent the mid-90s and early 2000s constructing this champion, including drafting 7 of the 11 players on the NFL's #1 defense. And that defense came together under coordinator Monty Kiffin and former head coach Tony Dungy, who crafted the now iconic Tampa 2 defense. However, it was Tony Dungy's shortcomings that ultimately led to their championship. Following back-to-back losses in the wildcard round on the road in Philadelphia, Dungy was let go. Tampa Bay then stacked first and second round picks onto a pile of cash and sent it to the Raiders for the rights to their head coach, Jon Gruden. Gruden did what Dungy couldn't. He led them to a franchise-best 12-4 record, he defeated Philadelphia on the road in the postseason, and when staring down the barrel of his former team, the Bucs buried them, 48-21. Jon Gruden was the difference maker. With him at the helm, they couldn't lose. The future was bright, and nothing could stand in the way of this team becoming a dynasty. Throughout their Super Bowl run, it was known that the relationship between Jon Gruden and his leading receiver Keyshawn Johnson was less than amicable. Johnson was the first Bucs receiver with over 1,000 yards since Mark Carrier in 1989, something Johnson achieved in both 2001 and 2002. But he wasn't happy with the way he was used in the offense. Fully aware of Keyshawn's importance in a Bucs offense lacking a depth of offensive playmakers, Gruden made a commitment to better understand the outspoken, emotional receiver as they prepared to defend their crown. But hope for peace didn't last long. In Week 3, sideline footage of a heated exchange between the two did little to quell worries about their deteriorating relationship. A Week 11 loss to the Packers marked the last time Johnson would play in a Buccaneers jersey. On November 18th, less than 10 months removed from their Super Bowl win, the Bucs deactivated the disgruntled receiver, claiming he had become a distraction. Receivers are replaceable. What mattered most was that the front office was happy. Reports of a rift between Jon Gruden and GM Rich McKay started coming out before the last piece of confetti hit the ground. Gruden openly criticized McKay at an off-season owners meeting, and it became clear that he was unhappy with the amount of money tied up in defensive players, as well as McKay's inability to sign offensive playmakers. Future Hall of Famer Emmitt Smith cited tension between the two as the reason he chose to sign with the Cardinals over the defending champs. He was quoted saying, "There was a power struggle going on down there. I didn't want to fool with it." That struggle ended in favor of Gruden before the season's end. McKay was granted permission to interview for other opportunities, and in December of 2003, 1 month after the team deactivated Keyshawn Johnson, McKay was hired as president and general manager of the Atlanta Falcons. 2003 saw the loss of Johnson and McKay, as well as Super Bowl MVP Dexter Jackson, who left in free agency prior to the season. But it also marked the return of Tony Dungy to Tampa, this time as head coach of the Colts. It was a Week 5 primetime Monday Night Football matchup. The undefeated Colts, led by Peyton Manning, were caught on their heels to start the game. The Bucs' second drive ended in a 74-yard touchdown pass from QB Brad Johnson to wideout Keenan McCardell. On their following drive, Johnson was picked off by Colts safety Mike Doss, who then fumbled the ball into the hands of McCardell, who took it in for a long touchdown. The Bucs entered half up 21-0 and momentum heavily in their favor. With 5 minutes remaining in the fourth, Bucs corner Rondé Barber picked off Peyton Manning and returned it for a touchdown, a nail in the coffin, or so it was thought. Up 35-14, the Bucs had a statement to make, but ended up making a very different one. With under 5 minutes to go, the Colts marched back, starting with a 90-yard kickoff return and a quick touchdown.
And Munger scores. He's in for the touchdown.
An onside kick recovery, a bomb to Marvin Harrison, and a defensive stop put the ball back in Manning's hands, down 7 with under 2 minutes left on the clock. Manning hit Marvin Harrison again to set up another touchdown. Then, with the game tied, Grammatica's 62-yard attempt as time expired was blocked, and the game went into overtime, where the Colts would complete a comeback for the history books. This second-half collapse illustrated the team's season-long struggles, but they entered Week 16 with their playoff hopes still intact. They just needed to get past the Falcons. The last play of the game for the Bucs offense was a failed two-point conversion. They lost 28-30 and were eliminated from playoff contention by Atlanta 6 days after they named Rich McKay their new president and general manager. The Bucs hired Jon Gruden hoping that he would help spark their offense. For the most part, it worked. The team jumped from the 24th ranked offense in 2002 to the 10th ranked offense in 2003, while maintaining a top 5 defense. But their 2-7 record in one-score games proved to be their downfall, as the 7-9 Bucs followed up their Super Bowl run with a losing record. It was not the best way for them to defend their crown, but at least they still had all 5 of their defensive Pro Bowlers from the championship roster. Drumroll, please. During the offseason, the Bucs raided Oakland once again and hired executive Bruce Allen as their new general manager. Allen and Gruden then shocked the Buccaneers fan base by releasing fan favorite and 3-time first-team All-Pro safety John Lynch. They then decided to let 7-time Pro Bowl defensive tackle Warren Sapp walk in free agency. And as expected, Keyshawn Johnson was traded, reuniting him with his former Jets coach Bill Parcells in Dallas. In Johnson's absence, McCardell led the team in receptions and yards en route to a Pro Bowl appearance in 2003. Knowing the Bucs' lack of depth at receiver, McCardell used his 2003 production as leverage and held out to start the 2004 season while asking for a new contract. Despite their offensive woes, Allen and Gruden denied his request. He never took the field for the Bucs again and was flipped to the Chargers prior to the 2004 trade deadline. Less than 2 years removed from their Super Bowl win, the Buccaneers had lost their GM and architect of the team, as well as both top receivers and 2 of the 5 All-Pros from the 2002 season. The money saved was meant to be used to upgrade the offense. Instead, it was used to sign the aging Charlie Garner, who played only 3 games for the Bucs before heading to the IR and ultimately retiring, as well as the 38-year-old Tim Brown, who hauled in 24 receptions and 1 touchdown all year before he too decided to retire. The 2004 season was also the end of the road for other key Super Bowl contributors. Kicker Martin Gramatica was released following 3 missed field goals in a Week 12 matchup against the Panthers. Dwight Smith, whose 2 interceptions in the Super Bowl helped seal their win, signed with the Saints in the ensuing offseason. And Brad Johnson, who, after starting the season 0-4, was benched in favor of 2003 third-round draft pick Chris Sims. He was cut at the end of the season at the age of 36. As for Sims, he made his first career start in Week 5 against the Saints and threw 8 passes before leaving in the first quarter with a shoulder injury. Free agent acquisition Brian Griese took over until Week 17 when Sims would get his second career start. A 7-12 loss to the Cardinals to finish the season with a 5-11 record at the bottom of the NFC South. The Buccaneers became the first team in NFL history to follow up a Super Bowl win with back-to-back losing seasons. But all was not lost. Yet. In 2005, the Bucs featured only 2 offensive starters from the 2002 team, but with largely the same faces on defense, they enjoyed a rebound year. They were once again the number 1 defense, and first-round draft pick Cadillac Williams was named Offensive Rookie of the Year, as the 11-5 Bucs finally returned to the postseason. But with 3 minutes left in the wildcard game against Washington, receiver Adele Shepard dropped a potential game-tying catch in the end zone. On their next drive, Chris Sims threw his second interception of the game. The Bucs lost 17-10. To start the 2006 season, ESPN's power rankings had the Bucs in the middle of the pack. But they projected that if Chris Sims took a big step forward, they could be really good. Well, Sims threw 1 touchdown and 7 interceptions before rupturing his spleen and missing the rest of the season. He would never take the field for the Bucs again and was quoted saying his relationship with Gruden was broken because of the way the coach treated him during his recovery. Their last game of the season was a loss to the Seahawks. It was also the final game of fullback Mike Alstott's career. After neck surgery in the offseason, Alstott was forced to sit the entire 2007 season before ultimately retiring. The Bucs finished the 2006 season with a 4-12 record. Tony Dungy and his Indianapolis Colts finished as Super Bowl champs. In the offseason, the Bucs signed QB Jeff Garcia, who would go on to be the Bucs' only Pro Bowler in 2007. They returned to the playoffs only to get bounced in the wildcard round once again. This all put Jon Gruden on thin ice, right? Well, the Bucs re-signed him through 2011. However, he wouldn't need that much time to set up his grand finale. The 2008 Bucs tied a franchise-best start, going 9-3. They were in position to earn a bye in the first round of the playoffs and completely bypassed the wildcard round that had become so troublesome for them. Then, in Week 14, the Bucs visited a Panthers team also sporting a 9-3 record, a Monday Night Football matchup with control of the division on the line. The two teams entered the fourth quarter tied at 17. That's when the once mighty Tampa Bay defense began to crumble. Jonathan Stewart and D'Angelo Williams combined for 147 yards and 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter alone. The Panthers grabbed hold of the NFC South with a 38-23 win and never let go. Starting with that game in Carolina, the Buccaneers didn't notch a single victory in the month of December. They fell from 9-3 to 9-7 and missed the playoffs following a loss to the team they had defeated for the championship only 6 years prior. Longtime defensive coordinator Monty Kiffin, who had become the league's highest-paid defensive coordinator the year before, left to join his son Lane at Tennessee, a decision announced in the middle of the Bucs' 4-game slide to end the season, and a sign that the golden era of Buccaneers football was coming to an end. Gruden was never really able to retool the offense the way he and the front office had hoped. He wanted to shift money and attention away from the defense and towards the offense, and in the end, it was the collapse of the defense that doomed them. On January 16, 2009, Jon Gruden was fired from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and so began their playoff drought. His time with the team ended a far cry from where it began, but every rise has a fall, and the guy at the end of the bar can still say, hey, we'll always have 2002. Just don't let him drive home. Thanks for watching the first episode of Collapse, our new show about how good teams just blow it and become bad teams, because not every championship needs to be followed up by a happy ending.